Have you ever thought about who the real rebels of the wizarding world are? What if I told you that it's not the Death Eaters or even the Order of the Phoenix? In today's video, you will find out why goblins are the most dangerous and underestimated force in the magical universe. Goblins are an ancient and intelligent race in the world of Harry Potter. In the films, they seem like strict, greedy bankers guarding vaults in Gringotts with an iron grip. Sure, they're grumpy and unwelcoming, but they don't seem like a real threat. Even young wizards manage to outsmart them and sneak into their heavily secured bank. But what if I told you that goblins were never meant to be mere background characters? History remembers them not as passive vault keepers, but as fierce revolutionaries who shook the wizarding world to its core. These small but formidable creatures have launched uprisings, waged wars, and defied magical authorities for centuries. So hold on to your wallets, because the Goblin Rebellion is about to begin. No one knows exactly when goblins first appeared in the magical world, but one thing is certain: they have been around for over 1,000 years. By the time Hogwarts was founded, goblins had already established a thriving culture and strong ties with wizards. How do we know this? One of Hogwarts' legendary artifacts, the Sword of Gryffindor, was crafted by the Goblin King Ragnar I. The weapon was so magnificent that Ragnar didn't want to part with it. He insisted that Godric Gryffindor had stolen it, leading to one of the first major conflicts between goblins and wizards. Over the centuries, goblins and wizards coexisted, but tension simmered beneath the surface. Wizards never saw goblins as equals. Maybe it was because of their appearance, short, long-fingered with sharp features. Maybe it was fear of their intelligence and craftsmanship. Either way, goblins found a way to thrive despite discrimination. In 1474, a goblin named Gringotts founded the most powerful financial institution in the magical world, Gringotts Bank. Unlike house elves, who were forced into servitude, goblins carved out a position of power. They controlled the wizarding economy and wielded a unique kind of goblin magic, one that didn't require wands. Goblins aren't just smart and hard-working, they are also fiercely proud and deeply resent injustice. And when they feel wronged, they don't stay silent. Throughout history, goblins have led multiple uprisings against wizard kind. Every time wizards imposed unfair laws or tried to restrict their rights, goblins responded with rebellion. The Ministry of Magic, fearing their power, passed a strict law forbidding non-humans from using wands. But even that wasn't enough to suppress them. One of the earliest revolts was led by none other than Ragnar I. Still enraged over losing Gryffindor's sword, he launched an armed rebellion against the wizarding world. It took the combined force of wizard armies to put it down. But that was just the beginning. Over the centuries, goblins staged at least 7 major revolts. Even during the events of Harry Potter, secret goblin factions were rumored to be working against the Ministry, planning sabotage and uprisings in the shadows. Goblins have always had their leaders, some seeking justice, others revenge. Here are some of the most notorious figures in goblin history. Gurg the Filthy, a 17th-century goblin ruler who led a violent rebellion after young wizards humiliated him by dunking him into a lake. What started as a petty insult turned into a full-scale war. Godrod Callous Hand, a goblin assassin responsible for the deaths of multiple wizards. When he was finally captured, his fellow goblins rallied to free him, sparking another uprising. Narlac, a goblin gangster in 1920s America, running an underground bar, a key figure in Fantastic Beasts. He proves that goblins never lost their edge. Bodrig the Crooked, the leader of the Goblin Brotherhood, an organization demanding the right to use wands. His protests escalated into riots, shaking the magical government. So next time you see goblins hunched over their desks at Gringotts, remember they are not just quiet bankers, They are warriors, rebels, and strategists, always watching, always waiting for their next move. The question is, what happens when they finally strike again? Griphook had always known the truth. Wizards would never see goblins as equals. They smiled politely when they needed something, but behind their backs they whispered about inferiority, about control. He had seen it too many times. First, they banned goblins from using wands. Then they claimed goblin-made treasures as their own. Worst of all, they locked goblins into a single role: bankers, vault-keepers, servants of wealth, but never true masters. Gringotts was a fortress, but it was also a cage, and cages, no matter how grand, could be broken. Few wizards ever questioned why goblins tolerated such injustice. They assumed goblins were weak, content with their place. That was their greatest mistake. Goblins never forgot, never forgave. Their history was a series of betrayals, and with each one, their anger grew. "The sword is ours," Griphook had once said, refusing to acknowledge wizard ownership of Gryffindor's blade. But it wasn't just about a sword. It was about centuries of stolen power, stolen dignity. There were whispers in the dark tunnels beneath Gringotts. A secret movement, hidden for generations, preparing for the day when goblins would rise. The Ministry of Magic saw them as vault keepers, but they were something else. Alchemists, curse breakers, weaponsmiths, they crafted not just treasures but power itself. The wizards had no idea what lay beneath their feet, what kind of magic goblins had mastered in the shadows. One name had resurfaced in old goblin records: Narbog the Silent, a goblin who lived in the 18th century, known to both goblins and wizards as a simple goldsmith. But that was a lie. Narbog had discovered something deeper, an ancient form of magic, one that did not rely on wands. Magic that could rival even the strongest spells of wizarding kind. They say he vanished one night, taking his secrets with him. But those secrets had never been lost. They had been waiting, passed down in whispers, growing stronger with every generation. The Ministry had always feared a goblin rebellion, but they believed brute force could contain it. That was why they crushed every uprising. In the 17th century, the infamous Gurg the Filthy led a revolt that nearly toppled wizarding rule. The Ministry barely survived, forcing goblins back into submission. They thought they had won, but revolutions are never truly over. The goblins learned, they adapted. This time, there would be no open war, no banner of rebellion. This time, the war would be fought from within. Gringotts was more than a bank. It was a weapon. It controlled the economy of the entire wizarding world. Every vault, every transaction, every ounce of gold, goblins held it all. If they chose to, they could bring the entire system to its knees. It wasn't about storming the Ministry with swords and spells. It was about something more dangerous: control, manipulation. The goblins would not need to fight a war if they could make the Ministry crumble from the inside. Inside the vaults, hidden among centuries-old treasures, lay artifacts even the Ministry had forgotten. Objects too powerful to be left in the hands of wizards. Some had been crafted by goblins, others stolen by them, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. A crown forged by Narbog himself, said to grant its wearer the ability to control metal with a single thought. A dagger infused with magic so dark that even the unspeakables feared it. These were not relics of the past. They were tools for the future. Then came the final step, the one thing wizards never saw coming. Allies. Not just goblins, but others who had been cast aside by wizard-kind. House elves, tired of servitude, centaurs who still burned with anger over their mistreatment. Even werewolves, outcasts in both magical and muggle worlds. A coalition was forming, and the Ministry had no idea. They still clung to their laws, to their power, blind to the storm gathering right under their noses. It was only a matter of time. Goblins had spent centuries watching wizards rise and fall. They knew their weaknesses, their arrogance, their reliance on old traditions. The ministry thought itself unshakable, but what if the foundations had already cracked? What if, even now, the economy of the wizarding world was being drained piece by piece from within? What if, one day, Gringotts simply closed its doors, not to robbers, but to the entire magical community? No battles, no spells, no open defiance, just silence. A slow collapse like a castle sinking into the sand. And by the time wizards realized what had happened, it would be too late. The ministry would fall. And when the dust settled, goblins would not just be bankers anymore. They would rule.